welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I'm going to talk to you about my reading plans for August. It's yet again another month where I have a nice big long list of books, and I don't know whether or not I'm going to get to all of them, but I'm going to start out with the books that I am prioritizing the most. So I'm still reading The Tale of Genji, and we'll finish that in August, finally. So that is on this list, along with Alloy of Law, which is the first book in Mistborn Era 2. We are doing Mist Along this year, where we're reading through all the Mistborn books, which is really exciting for me, especially because this is my first reread of Era 1, but I've never read Era 2. So I'm really excited. So if you're in the same boat where either you want to reread Era 2 or you haven't read it at all, now is the perfect time to jump in and join us. We will also be reading The 11th Metal, which is a novella that I think is kind of like a prequel to Era 1, maybe? But I think it has some spoilers for some of Era 1, which is why we put it where we did. I also have some group reads and buddy reads that I'm going to be working on. So with my in-person book club for the month of August, we are going to be reading The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. I really enjoyed everything by Oscar Wilde that I've read. I've read some of his short stories, like the fairy tale ones, and I've read The Picture of Dorian Gray, and I meant to read The Importance of Being Earnest last year during Victober, and I just didn't get to it. So I'm super excited to be reading this with my in-person book club. With my Patreon, we usually do group reads every other month, but there was a book that a bunch of us wanted to read that's like a cozy mystery, and it's translated from the Japanese, and it's The Kamigawa Food Detectives by Hisashi Kashiwai, I think is how you pronounce it. So anyways, I'm excited to read this because just look at the cover. I don't know anything about it except look at the cover. So I'm really excited to read this with a bunch of my patrons. We just decided we wanted to read it together. So yeah, that will be really fun. I'm also really hoping to jump in on a read along that Krista from Books and Jams is hosting during the month of August of Hind's Feet in High Places by Hannah Hurnard Hurnard. I read this when I was a child and I haven't reread it since, but I remember there's parts of it that I remember really specifically as a child that very deeply impacted me. So I'm really looking forward to rereading this. This is an allegorical story representing your relationship with Christ. You could kind of maybe compare it to Pilgrim's Progress, but the storyline is not at all similar. It's more modern than Pilgrim's Progress, although it's not that modern. I think it's still older. But in general, yeah, that's the same kind of allegorical story about the progression of your walk with Christ. So I'm excited to hopefully reread this one. And then of course I have plenty of buddy reads coming up. So I am buddy reading The Girl Who Kept the Castle with Christy, and we're actually kind of doing a casual read along with this. If you want to join us, we're going to be having a live show at the end of August to talk about this book by Ryan Groden. I don't know a ton about this book. The author actually reached out to me and asked if I would like a copy of it. So I have an ebook copy of it, and I'm really excited to read it. I've heard it compared to like Howl's Moving Castle, which I just read last month. You may have seen my vlog talking about book versus movie on that. So it sounds like very magical and whimsical, which just sounds perfect. I am also going to be buddy reading The Red and the Black by Stendhal with Dia, and I'm really excited to read this with her because Stendhal was referenced in several books that we read together last year, most notably Borges' works, but it was also referenced in the posthumous memoirs of Bras Cubas, and so we have wanted to read some Stendhal together. I picked this up at like a thrift store or McKay's or something, and she ended up with a copy as well, so we're really excited to read this together. And this actually, for my summer book bingo, this is going on my mentioned in another book, and it was this book and Dia and I planning to read this book this summer that prompted that square being on the bingo board. So kind of fun. I don't really know anything about this book, really. It's supposed to be like a psychological novel, I think, of a man who is charged with the attempted murder of a woman, and that's really all I know about it. I am also really hoping to finish the Memoirs of Lady Trent series in the month of August. I've been reading these with my friend Whitney Drew, and we have really enjoyed them. So we've read the first 4 books, and the last one is Within the Sanctuary of Wings. So I really hope that this is a good conclusion to the series because book 4 was just really wonderful. I don't know if this really counts as a buddy read. It's kind of like a traveling book club that I am doing with my Patreon, because my in-person book club did that for Shark Heart, which I mentioned, and my Patreon thought that sounded like so much fun. So we decided that we are going to do that with How Do You Live? This is a Japanese classic, and I don't really know a whole lot about it. I think it's about some young boys, kind of a coming of age story, and I know that it's one of Miyazaki's favorite books of all times, and he actually came out of retirement to make, I think it's The Boy and the Heron or The Boy and the Crane, I can't remember, whichever most recent Studio Ghibli movie that he did that came out, he came out of retirement to do that, and it is an adaptation of this book. So I am going to be kicking off August. This is going to be like the first book that I read in August, and then it's going to go on to the next person, and we will be able to see each other's notes in the margins and then be able to discuss it all together at the end, is the hope. So I will be starting this in August. My classic that I will be reading for the month of August is The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. I love these editions. I have a couple of books in this edition, and they were my grandfather's books. So I read The Grapes of Wrath when I was in high school, and I remember enjoying it, but not as much as East of Eden. And I have not read it again since. I don't really know much else about it. I think it's about some families who are traveling. I think it takes place maybe during the Dust Bowl, and they're trying to travel to California for a chance at a better life and more prosperity than what they're currently living through. And I think that that's really all that I know about it. I don't remember any details, character names, anything like that. I remember what happens in the very last page of the book, because as a teenager, I remember thinking it was so weird, and I hadn't read anything like that before. But other than that, I really don't remember very much about it. So I'm really looking forward to picking this back up, and I have been meaning to reread it for years, so I'm really excited to. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to put this next book in this TBR video, because I'm kind of wondering what the chances are of me actually reading it. Not only because my list is really long, but just because I have really been sucking at reading the books that are on my Reader Read project this year, and I only chose 12 of them, and I still am really behind. I haven't read one off of that list. I have them scheduled out for every single month, and they were aligned with Chantel Reads All Day's Read Your Bookshelf Challenge, and I haven't read them in months, so I don't know what the chances are of me actually getting to this, because it's not a book I'm excited about reading. But that is The Hotel at the Corner of Bitter and Sweet. I've actually heard great things about this historical fiction. I think it takes place in World War II, maybe? Yeah, so it's dual timeline and has to do with, I think, Japanese internment camps, and then also has another timeline in the 80s. So yeah, I'm sure it's wonderful. I'm sure it's great, but it's just not one that I'm really that interested in picking up, which is why it's on my Reader Read project. I'm not a huge historical fiction reader, particularly dual timeline historical fiction, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm throwing it on this list because I'm supposed to read it in August, but whether or not I actually do is another story. The last book that I am mentioning here is a short one, and it's actually something I'm reading in preparation because I am going to be teaching a British Lit class to my homeschool group for the high schoolers this fall, and the first book that we are going to be talking about is Animal Farm by George Orwell. I've read this before, but it's been a really long time, like at least half a dozen years, but I remember really liking it. I am also, if this wasn't enough, I am planning to try a chapter and then read whichever book I end up choosing, but there is a space on my bingo board for judge a book by its cover, and so I want to go to the library and pick a whole bunch of books just simply based on their cover, and then whichever one I like the most is the one I want to complete and read for that space on the bingo board. So that is my TBR for the month of August. A lot of these are things that I'm actually committed to reading, but some of them are maybe a bit more superfluous and could get moved around if they need to. But I'm really excited about a lot of the books on this list, and hopefully I can get to all of them. But August also sees the return of homeschooling, so my time will be a little more limited. So we'll see how that goes. I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. What are you reading in the month of August? What are you the most excited to pick up? Are you participating in any fun readathons? This is actually the first month in a while that it doesn't feel as readathon heavy, but it still has some, I guess, with Tale of Genji and Mistborn. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.